Welcome back to 12th Year Health. I'm Dr. Derek DeSilva. A recent study showed students are carrying quite a heavy load at school. While elementary age students are carrying about 5 pounds worth of homework and books in their backpacks, some 6th graders were carrying as much as 30 pounds. Now, you don't have to be a doctor to know that this could cause some health problems. Here with some tips on the proper use of backpacks and how much kids should really be lugging around is Dr. Sigmund Miller, the Executive Director of the Association of New Jersey Chiropractors. Dr. Miller, thank you very much for being here.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So, I mean, it seems obvious to me what the problems could be, but from your position, from your point of view, what are the problems with these heavy backpacks?
Well, first, moms got to be good to themselves because there's a lot of pressure on them to do the right thing. And they're under a lot of stress, and you know it's not cool to carry a lot of stuff around and not look the way you're supposed to look. So one of the biggest problems is they buy an inexpensive backpack and they fill it up with as much stuff as they could possibly carry, and the kids suffer for that.
Yeah, and I guess this becomes more of an issue, or I guess it's equal with younger and older, right? I mean, it doesn't matter what age you are as far as these backpacks go and the weight.
It is. The challenge is with the older kids, again, it doesn't look as cool, so they're going to push back more with mom and dad. But the younger kids with developing spines and so on, you've got to be extra careful with them, especially.
And what about the health problems? What kind of health issues can these heavy backpacks really cause?
Well, there's a lot of studies. First of all, it's anticipated that more than half the kids going back to school are carrying more than they should. And one of the biggest concerns is that they're getting backaches and back pains, poor posture. They may get some numbing and tingling in their fingers and their feet. So there's a lot of physical complaints that the parents might be able to pick up on.
And you mentioned some of them as you just said this, but what are some of the possible warning signs, and why is there going to be a problem with tingling and numbness of their hands and their feet?
Well, the spine and the nervous system, it controls all. And when you start dealing with poor posture and pressure on nerves, they're going to start feeling those symptoms. But we got to keep it simple. Just look at the child. Watch how they're putting the backpack on and taking it off. If they're struggling, if they're walking around slouched over, having difficulty moving, you got a pretty good idea that maybe there's a little bit more weight than they should be carrying around.
Well, I mean, this is probably multifactorial between too much homework, bigger books, obviously, right? Bringing too much stuff home. I mean, I guess that's the problem here.
Well, it is. You know, I'm old enough to remember what it was like to be able to visit your locker. Lockers aren't so convenient anymore, so the kids basically carry what they need, one-stop shop, and they're loaded up and carrying it around. And they have to, first of all, be very selective in what they're going to carry, because there's a lot of things that they need on an ongoing basis, so they've got to try to make it easier on themselves.
Well, I remember when my younger son especially would come home, he would just throw everything into his backpack because he didn't know what he was going to need for homework. And I remember that, whereas my older son would say, you know, I'm not going to worry about that. But I guess that's probably part of the issue.
Well, it is, and that's why one of the key features of a good design, it should have multiple compartments. And that way, how you load it, heavier things first, distribute it nicely, make sure certain things are adjusted properly. All those things are important. Unfortunately, once again, you buy the less expensive and just fill it all up, and they're just loading it on and carrying it around.
Well, let's get to the whole idea of how much is really too much. You know, the Academy of Pediatrics says no more than 10 to 20% of the child's weight. Can you just start commenting on that? We've got some backpack safety tips here. It says, again, about 20% of their body weight. Can you just comment on that very briefly?
Sure. First of all, it's interesting because I filled one up. When I was in practice and parents would bring their kids in, on average, they carried around a 16-pound bag. And that 16 pounds in this study had kids carrying around 30 pounds, twice as much.
Wow.
As a general rule, 20% is the upper limit.
This is heavy.
I know.
This is heavy.
I understand.
This is really heavy.
About 10 to 15% is a good body weight. Maybe 15 pounds for a 100-pound child. The younger the child, move more to 10% of the body weight. The older child, maybe 15% of the body weight.
And then a backpack should never hang more than 4 inches below the waistline.
Yeah, some common sense. Have it adjusted so it doesn't go above the neckline and doesn't hang below 4 inches below the belt line. That's probably a pretty good idea.
Okay. The next one is a backpack with individual components or compartments, excuse me, helps position contents more effectively, and that makes sense.
Yeah, this one in particular has a number of compartments on the side and the front. I don't know what kids carry around today, but it's heavy stuff.
Yeah.
So the more compartments, the more evenly distributed the weight. Again, load things in first that are heavier and make sure it's well distributed. If not, you could see it's not really doing the job properly.
Okay, and then bigger is not necessarily better. and can encourage heavier loads.
It
right?
really does. Again, you could find these reasonably priced, $40, $50, multiple compartments. There's another interesting tip. Not only do the straps have to be thick and wide for comfort, but the undersurface of the backpack should be padded as well, because that lies directly up against the child's back, and that makes it more comfortable as well.
So you need the padding on the straps and then the padding
Yeah.
right here on the back.
That'll work well for them as well.
Makes sense. Choose a backpack with wide, as we just mentioned, padded shoulder straps that are adjustable, and that would adjust for the weight and the neck, and I mean, that's the height and the neck.
Yeah,
and
while
stuff.
you're on the straps, there are certain backpacks that are sling packs. They only have one that slide over the shoulder. It looks very cool to carry around, but it's not really well designed for the spine. So using the straps that are wide, having it nicely balanced on the shoulders, is a pretty good idea.
Okay, and urge your child to wear both shoulder straps. I guess this is what you just said.
Yeah, in fact, for the younger kids, they even have a design where there's a strap that goes around the stomach. So it secures it more to the abdomen area. It doesn't flop around. So that's another little added benefit they can have.
So parents need to sit down. They need to talk to the children about how to pack their backpack. And that would be, as you said, the heavier books back in the back.
Yeah.
Right? Lighter things, distribute some of the books all around the bag. And what else? What else do they need to do?
Well, I think that pretty much covers it. Just use some common sense. Make sure that you're checking the child. They're not going to come to you and ask you these kinds of questions. And be selective in what's going to go in there. And, watch them walk around with it. And you'll get a pretty good
Right.
idea. Then intuition will let them know that they're doing it the right
and
way.
what about the cost on these things? You mentioned it before.
Yeah.
I mean, what do they usually run?
Well, probably about $40 to $50, $60 at the ANJC's website. It's njchiropractors.com. They can go on and download information. They could actually purchase some backpacks online that are good. But rather than worry about brand, take some of the tips that we're talking about and find those that really conform to that.
Let me ask you real quickly. What about the things that the bags that the kids pull? Isn't that a better idea?
It is, but that's not
It's a
cool.
little pretty
That's not
geeky,
cool
right?
if you're a teenager.
Yeah.
You know, when you're old like me, I like wheels.
Yeah.
But the younger kids will do it. But from a practical perspective, the older kids aren't going to wheel it around. It's just
All
not
right.
going to happen.
Well, I
So,
guess
yeah.
it's just, again, parents, you and I,
Yeah.
remember what the kids were like, lugging those backpacks around.
And again, the parents got to be good to themselves, because this is just another thing on their list, so they got to take a
Absolutely.
deep breath and relax.
Very good. Hey, thank you very much for joining us.
pleasure.
Pleasure
Thanks
to
for
have
having
you
me.
here. Our pleasure. And folks, if you have any questions or comments about today's interview, or if there's a topic that you would like to see discussed in our program, email your thoughts to us at 12tohealth@news12.com.